welcome to the latest edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Cassidy Jo Fullerton. Today we are joined by two Cal State Fullerton students who are not afraid to voice their opinion and stand up for what they believe is right. Each of them are members of Cal State Fullerton's two respected political clubs, which have each received their fair share of accolades. Please welcome President of the CSUF Republicans Club, Christopher Boyle, and the President of the Democrats of Cal State Fullerton Club, CSUF Fulani. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Really excited to have you. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I just want to know, tell me a little bit about yourselves. Seppi, if you want to go ahead and start.
My name is CSUF Fulani. I am the President of the College Democrats of Cal State Fullerton. Orange County native. I am a senior here, and I study political science, and I work for Senator Harris.
Perfect. And then Chris?
My name's Chris Boyle. I'm a junior here. I study business with a focus in accounting. I transferred in from Orange Coast College this last year. I currently work at the Auditor Controller's Office.
Cool. And tell me a little bit about each of your respected organizations.
So I'm the president of the College Democrats Club. How I got started essentially was I was working for the Democratic Party of Orange County about a year and a half ago, and a fellow intern who is also a student here told me that she's interested in getting the club started up again because it went through a period of kind of incognito. And she clearly needed officers to help her run the operations, so she recruited me, and from there, and clearly I've always been interested in politics from the Democratic progressive side, so my passion and her pushing me for it, yeah.
Very nice. And what was it like starting it up again?
It was a slow process,
Okay.
needless to say, and it was in the midst of the primary, so we were working towards the primary elections in June. So we had speakers come in that were running to be state senator or assembly members. So I was interested to see people coming to our club to listen to these speakers and kind of learn what the political process is like before the general election. So it was interesting.
Very nice. And Chris, tell me a little bit about the Republican Club.
Yeah, so actually somewhat similar situation to Seppi. I came in from Orange Coast College last year during the fall, and when I came in, the Cal State Fullerton Republicans didn't really exist so much. It had sort of become a little bit defunct. I'd had a history being involved in the Republican Club over at Orange Coast College. I originally actually got involved in student government there because they were having a lot of problems with their counseling system, so I got involved to fix that. Ended up writing a resolution to their board of trustees about a math program that they were shutting down. So I'm really, I come from sort of an activist mindset. So when I came to Cal State Fullerton, I learned that their club was more or less defunct. It felt really important for me to sort of relaunch, especially because it was an election year and it was during the primaries. So similar to Seppi, I brought on some really amazing speakers. I had now former Assemblywoman Young Kim. I had Orange County Supervisor Andrew Doe. Chairman of the Republican Party, Fred Whitaker, and we're also lucky enough to bring down both Steve Mahalo and Andy Pudsner, who, if you remember, he was up for Secretary of Labor for a time.
That's very nice.
Yeah, so it's been a really great experience, and we're really excited to get members launched into a world of political activism, both through sending them off to conferences like the California Republican Party Convention, where we just had 5 different members attend, and also through different activist trainings, like trainings through the Leadership Institute, which we offer to members.
Okay, so you've both kind of talked about how you bring in speakers and different political leaders to both of your clubs. What other events do you sort of hold, and what are some of the topics that you're passionate about?
So I've been working with a group called Indivisible Orange County, and I know people that work in the Democratic Party of Orange County and the Democrats of North Orange County. And with them, I've kind of built this coalition where we'll come together to co-sponsor events. Like about a month ago, we co-sponsored an event with the DNOC, Democrats of North Orange County, and it was called Beyond 2016, and it was kind of about unification and bringing together people through like this period of division and like a lot of tension on both sides, and like it was kind of a seminar to teach people about accepting others and anti-bigotry and like being tolerant. So my club is kind of keen on working together with other organizations in order to bring together people and spread awareness on issues that kind of concern groups that are disenfranchised, feel that they're kind of voiceless. So that's what's going on.
That's really great. So you bring a lot of different people together and open up their world beyond just the club here on campus.
Yes, I want to take as many outside groups as I can because I can only do so much on campus, and I don't have widespread knowledge on everything that goes on in the community. So I'd love to bring on other people so they can educate not only me, but the club members as well.
Very nice. And then Chris?
So some of the things that we like to do just beyond what happens at the club, right, beyond speaker events that we have, which are fantastic, and sort of training events that we have, which are really great, we also like to do a lot of fun social stuff. So we'll go up to conferences together. That's always a lot of fun. But last semester, we also had a group shooting event. We all went out to a shooting range together, an outdoor shooting range, and a lot of fun.
Okay.
We actually did that with another club on campus, so we like to involve ourselves with other political groups. We're also really keen on getting people involved in campaigns, internships, anything that you want to do to advance yourself in the political world. If you're coming from that conservative mindset, our goal is definitely to launch you out there and sort of be a springboard for you as an individual.
Okay, very nice. So it seems like both of you really try to get all of your people involved outside of the community and then with other organizations, which is really great. So you're really promoting everything that you also believe in. That's really nice. I'd like to know a little bit more about what your thoughts are on today's political parties, both your own and possibly the other one.
As far as my own political party goes, I think the party needs to diversify itself. Sorry.
Okay.
In terms of representatives, I know when I look at the Democratic Party as well as my other friends and colleagues, we kind of feel that we aren't represented because there's a lot of old establishment figures present in the Democratic Party. And we feel that more women need to be elected into office, people of color, members from the LGBTQ community, because that is the only way that we feel that we can truly be represented. Because when we look at our current representatives, we don't feel like we're being wholly represented. But as far as both parties go, I think both parties come from a place of altruism in terms of representatives. I think that very few people aspire to get into politics for selfish reasons.
Okay.
I think most people are patriotic who get elected into office. They just have different avenues of expressing it. So,
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to, and something really important to look at, is that both Democrats, Republicans, people that don't identify with any party that are interested in politics and represent us in whatever district or state we live in, I think they're doing it to truly get the country in a better place.
And then you mentioned how it could use a little more diversity. Do you think there's a reason why you're not getting that diversity, or are there any suggestions to how the party could possibly get that diversity?
I just think it's hard to change old habits. People grow up with certain stereotypes of the type of people who are elected into political offices. Prior to President Obama being president, we only had white men be president, so that was set up as the norm. So it would have been weird to see President Obama be elected prior to when he wasn't, or Mitt Romney was a Mormon, and people have very set ways in how they believe that people who identify with one religion are not prone to getting elected into office.
Right.
So I think we just have to break barriers and understand that we don't live in the 1700s anymore, that we are becoming more multicultural, and
Yeah, and then Chris, what about you? What do you think about your party, the Democratic Party, any bit of it?
It's a really good question. I think for the Republicans, the strength of our party, and you're seeing a lot of resurgent strength in the party, right, both locally and nationally, I think the strength of the party lies in the individuals that make it up. That's why here in Southern California, you're seeing such a strong resurgence of California Republican, sort of college Republican politics, right? You look at all the activity that's happening here at Cal State Fullerton. You're also looking at groups that are thriving and really rebuilding California Republican politics at the college level at University California Irvine, at Orange Coast College. Now even Santa Ana City College has a college Republicans club.
Okay.
So, and this is all based on individuals who feel strongly enough to go out there and make positive changes in their government. And that's why when you mention minority representation and really diversity within political parties, that's why within Southern California, especially Orange County, you've seen the Republicans lead with more minority candidates put up than anywhere else. I mean, you look at former Assemblywoman Young Kim, who's Korean. You look at Ling Chang. You look at Michelle Steele, who may be running for Congress soon. And soon Cece Iglesias, who's doing very, very well in Santa Ana. We in the Orange County Republican Party really value individuals who go out there and fight strongly for what they believe is right in government and also in society. That's why it's really imperative, especially on the college level, for people to get involved, even when you see a strong outcry against your voice, right? Anywhere on college campuses, especially in California, places like Berkeley, where there's rioting when you bring on conservative speakers, places like Cal State Long Beach or Cal State LA, where they block the doors when you try to bring in conservative speakers, or even here at Cal State Fullerton, where you have professors assaulting conservative students. It's really important for individuals to stand up and insist that their voice be heard.
And I think that's imperative for both sides, no matter what, right?
Definitely, it definitely is. And that's why, it's great that you see so many Democrats getting out and getting organized, but it's unfortunate when they get violent at the same time, like what happened in Washington, D.C. I was there for the inauguration. It was difficult just to get around because rioting had broken out through half the city. It was a terrible situation, and it's unfortunate that people feel the need to express their freedom of speech in a violent way, especially in an open democracy like we have here in America.
Right. Seppi, do you have any thoughts on the riots or anything?
I am a huge pacifist. I personally do not advocate for any sort of violence or rioting. I think it's important to protest and, like Chris said, have your voice heard. I don't think it's cool to have instigators come into an open space, a public space, and insist that someone not have their voice heard.
So what do you think the alternative to a riot would be, or should
I think just protest. Don't block the door. If you disagree with what someone is saying, go and listen to them and then debate them. Your argument becomes less valid if you insist on being violent or agitating the other side.
Right, because in a way, you can say if you agree or disagree with this, you're supposed to be a representative of whatever you stand for, and so if you start to show these aggressive habits, then they're going to just immediately mark that on everyone who you represent, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right, so I'd like to ask you now a little bit about where do you find value on the other side? And also maybe where do you not necessarily disagree with your own side?
So one of the areas that I really find value with the Democrats, at least in the past, was their youth outreach. They used to be very, very good at youth outreach, and they're also very good at messaging. One of the things that we were talking about when we were doing the counter protest a few weeks back was the Democrats have all the good chants. You guys, they really do. You stole all the good chants. So we got to be a little more creative. And then one of the things I think Republicans struggle with is like the cool image. You look at like Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, they were always able to pull off this cool thing, like wear sunglasses inside and play saxophone or whatever. You don't see that happen with Republicans, unfortunately. You get dudes like Paul Ryan with the red backwards baseball cap lifting weights. It's not, so I think we got to be a little more hip, a little more cool. The Democrats, I think, they really keyed that in. One of the problems with the Republican Party, I think that sort of covers it up right there.
Okay, very nice. And then Seppi, anything you'd like to add?
I've always respected the Republican Party for their sense of unity.
Okay.
A lot of people were saying back during the primaries, the presidential primaries, that the Republican Party is in the midst of dying, like it's like imploding from the inside. And then you see at the convention that the Republicans are united and they're standing behind President Trump, whereas the Democrats were in this state of like inner fighting, and people were really dismayed at what was going on between Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton. And I've always thought that Republicans are better in coming together and standing behind what they believe, whereas I think the Democrats don't have the best strategy in like coming together and being like, this is what we need to do in order to like fight back for our values. I think the Republicans have always been a couple steps ahead of us. And yeah, I've always respected that, and I've tried to figure out ways where like I, as a Democrat, can kind of level in with that and learn from the other side, like how can we look to them and like create power and strength within our own party.
So would you both say it's beneficial to look at what the other side is doing and how they're succeeding so that you can adapt some of that for your own political party?
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
Very nice. All right, now I'd like to read a quote to you real fast and just kind of get your thoughts on it. So the quote says, I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. what I'm really interested in, how you possibly think that that's relevant in our society today, because I think there's a lot of people who are clashing because they strongly disagree with a lot of different things. So I just kind of like to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, when you say that, I remember what was happening at Berkeley when Milo Yiannopoulos, I don't know how to say his last name, when he came to speak, and there was this outcry and outrage from the Democratic and liberal side. And he was publicized and on national TV for, I don't know, weeks, days, a long period of time. I couldn't get away from his face or his name for days. And the best way to combat that is to listen to him again. I don't think anyone wants to live in an echo chamber. I think that's rather ignorant. So once you limit someone's free speech, you are just adding to your own ignorance and your lack of willingness to cooperate with other people.
Okay.
That's essentially where I stand on that. Once you begin to limit free speech, I think it just, it's to your own peril.
Okay.
Unless someone is saying fire in a movie theater, I think just listen to what they're saying, and then it can add to your own argument, or you can start to see their side and cooperate.
Very nice. That's a great way of putting it, I think. And then Chris, what would you like to add to that?
I think Seppi's exactly right. I mean, you can look and when the other side brings on a speaker, and often, you have a lot of controversial conservative speakers, whether it's Milo Yiannopoulos or, Ben Shapiro, who's less of a shock jock than Milo is, right? Milo, at the end of the day, he is kind of a shock jock character, but you bring them on and you let them speak, and one way or the other, they're either going to say something that you could find value in and you could take away from, or they're going to talk themselves into a corner and paint themselves as the bad guy. And when you live in an open democratic society, you let the ideas speak for themselves. And there's always things we have to be mindful of. There's always civil liberties and civil protections we have to have in place, and that's why we have things like the Bill of Rights, to ensure that everyone has those things protected. Speech is an important thing that's protected because it allows us to function in a society where ideals is really the medium of exchange that we build our government upon.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you just need to listen to the other side, listen to all the ideas, because eventually, yes, you're not all going to agree on everything, but it's important to make sure that the other side is heard so that you can't have that clash necessarily, or perhaps maybe those protests at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then this kind of brings me into my next question. So you talked about, or we were talking about free speech and talking and everything. There's been a lot going on about fake news. So I'd kind of like to get your perspective on that whole topic, because it's getting pretty relevant in today's society.
Honestly, the idea of fake news kind of baffles me. I'm still struggling with how to put together like what it truly means to me and how this has come up, because it doesn't only exist on the conservative side, as people like to say. I see stuff published on Facebook by my friends and family that's like far leaning to the left, that's not true in any way. And I've had to message my uncle, like, come on, man, like, don't post this, like liberal democracy, fight the whatever ridiculous name that the Facebook page has. I'm like, they're not a certified like voice on like the Democratic Party. Like, this is just fake and it's a falsehood. What I think is important is when you look back at W. Bush's presidency and Obama's presidency, there was a lot of negative coverage on various things that they did. But I don't recall ever hearing them say that this is fake news.
Okay.
So I think a concern arises when a president is saying that the press is the enemy of the state or the enemy of the people. It just worries me a little. And the only way that you can verify that something is true is by, if you're reading an article online, take that title, put it into Google, and see if a verified website shows that it's true. Like, double check, triple check.
Right. All right, and then Chris?
I definitely think the idea of fake news, or even, the old concept of yellow journalism, I think we're seeing a resurgence of it today, and I think it's definitely problematic.
Okay.
I'll be honest, on election night, when the news was announced, my world was shook. I had hoped that President Trump would end up pulling out, but when it happened, no one expected it, right? The polls all said it couldn't happen, the news said it couldn't happen, and that really instilled a seed of doubt for me and a lot of people. And now you look, and there's consistent coverage where things are constantly changing in the media, right? For instance, when President Trump issued the travel ban, that has been very controversial, and there's been a lot of back and forth on it, and one of the things that was reported right off the bat was that, oh, there hasn't been any terrorism from any of these countries, this is very, very safe. And then the next day, the White House released a list of terror suspects who've been apprehended from all of these countries.
Right.
And you have issues like this happening again and again and again, whether it's, the predicted results of the presidential election, whether it's, saying something the president said wasn't true when the facts are behind it. There's a lot of fake news running around, and it is on both sides, right? Pizzagate, obviously, that's a terrible thing, and we don't want people running into pizza shops with, assault weapons because they read some weird thing on, some conspiracy theory website, right? But there's, unfortunately, from the mainstream media, there's a lot of news coming out that seems to have a bias from it.
Okay.
And from the perspective of a conservative, it's hard to take a lot of the accusations seriously. You hear people shouting, accusations that we've honestly heard since George Bush was president. People have been spewing the same accusations at Donald Trump that they have since George Bush. And I just saw, I forget which one, I think it was like Vox or one of those, very left-leaning sites saying that, now George Bush has become the voice of reason because he said something slightly critical of Donald Trump. And I just think it's very unfortunate the amount of bias we've seen in the media. And one of the things I notice as well is it's not necessarily outright lies. The media is typically not lying directly to you, right? 9 times out of 10. Obviously, sometimes mistakes happen, and typically they go back and issue corrections. But I'll see a lot of just distortions. So I listen to NPR a lot. I'm actually a religious listener to NPR. I love their hourly 5-minute news update. Really, really great. I listen to Planet Money all the time. But they'll choose what to report, right? And they'll choose their language. So I was listening to a report the other day about a pro-life protest in Washington, D.C. And the way NPR reports it is there are anti-reproductive rights protesters in Washington, D.C. clashing with pro-reproductive rights demonstrators. There's an obvious bias connected to that language. And that goes to show what the true intention of that media outlet is. And it's really unfortunate when you're at my side of the table and when you see, the majority of news outlets reporting with a clear bias. So that's why you see a lot of Republicans cheer when Donald Trump says, "You're fake news." They feel vindicated because they've been seeing an obvious bias in the media for decades, for upwards of 20 years now. Since George Bush was president, we've been seeing it, probably since longer, but that's as far back as my foggy memory goes. But that's why you see a lot of Republicans really vindicated by this concept of Donald Trump calling out news that's doing bias reporting.
So what do you think then what role should media play then?
I think that's a tricky question, especially in today's world, because you have a lot of media that doesn't have the gatekeeper that you once had, right? It used to be that it took a lot to put media out there. You'd have to own a gigantic printing press. You'd have to put all the stuff out there. Beyond that, even radio broadcasting made it a little bit easier, but you
now
still
it's
had
at
to
our
put the money.
fingertips.
Exactly, now it's at our fingertips. Now everyone with a Twitter is a micro reporter. Now everyone's putting news out there all the time to the point where you have a bomb threat go on at a school, and the school doesn't want to issue information about it because they don't know they have the correct info, but the parents are already learning about it through Facebook and through Twitter, calling the school saying, "What's happening with my child?" It's to the point where we can't really control the flow of information. So it's a very Hunter S. Thompson world out there for a lot of these journalists, and I definitely feel for them. But that's why I think it's more important now than ever to have clear and consistent journalism with a real basis in unbiased truth, right? And you used to have people that had real biases behind them, right? Walter Cronkite, he was a very left-leaning dude in his private life.
Right.
But by most accounts, right, this was before my time, but by most accounts, he tried to maintain an unbiased stance on a lot of his reporting. And that's something that I think modern reporting needs to learn from. But the problem is, the reason that a lot of reporters can't do this is because of competition. We have these clickbait articles, we have this bottom line, you have ad dollars that need to be pushed.
You have to be the first to report whether it's true or not.
Exactly. If it bleeds, it leads, right? And now it leads so much faster because the internet. You have to have people clicking, you have to have people watching and sharing. So it pays to have disinformation out there. And it pays to issue corrections. It pays to run a bad story and then issue a correction later because you already got the ad revenue. That's the problem with the news media today. It's not some, I don't think it's some, vast conspiracy. To a certain degree, I think there's a lot of left-leaning people who get into get into journalism, and I think that, when it comes time for them to inject a bias and it's paying for them to do it, they're going to inject the bias that they hold. I think there's market forces behind it, and it's unfortunate.
Okay. And then I'd like to know a little bit more about some of the what your thoughts are on some of the legislation that's being passed currently. So you already mentioned, Chris, the travel ban that Trump's put out there. What are your thoughts on that, both of you?
I think it's important to have vetting, extensive vetting, because I clearly want to live in a safe environment. I don't want to come to school with a bomb threat, or live in a neighborhood where someone may decide to do a mass shooting.
Okay.
But extensive vetting already exists for those 7 countries. I mean, I'm Iranian, and even being born in the United States, a lifelong resident of Southern California, when I would travel abroad and come back, I would be extensively questioned upon returning to the United States as a citizen. So I can't even imagine what individuals who have visas, travel visas that are coming in, how much they're questioned and how long they're held and detained at airports in order to figure out if they're a threat upon entering.
Right.
And even prior to entering the United States or getting on your flight, getting the ticket, people are vetted extensively. I don't know the exact process, but for some people it takes a year, 2 years. So if, let's say Iran, because I know that country, there are individuals I know who are from the LGBTQ community who don't feel safe in Iran because you don't want to be anyone who upsets the government, to put it nicely. So they apply for refugee status, and it takes years for them to get approved. And in the meantime, they don't feel safe in Iran while they pose no threat to the United States. But it's important to have that time lapse where we can figure out if they're going to be a threat and then allow them to come in. And clearly there have been issues where people have come into the country with bad intentions, or there have been individuals who were born in the United States who have a Muslim upbringing or maybe not a Muslim upbringing, but they
maybe adopted those negative thoughts.
Yeah, they adopt negative thoughts and they're violent. They do awful things. I think it's important to be holistic and understand that the countries that Donald Trump did not ban from coming in, like Saudi Arabia, he has interests in that country.
Okay.
He has businesses there. He brings in revenue and profit from there. Whereas countries like Iran, he doesn't have a hotel there. And Iran is known as one of our big enemies, along with North Korea and Russia, I guess, but not really anymore. So it's easier to target a country like that and say they pose a danger, even though an individual hasn't come from Iran in I don't know how many years and has done any terrorist activities.
So then, Chris?
It's definitely a troubling issue, right? A lot, because I feel for the people who want to escape countries that are awful, that have awful living conditions, right? I understand. I mean, America's greatness is a shining beacon. But at the end of the day, the world has billions and billions of people in it, and we have to make sure that to keep America safe and to keep America great, we're careful about how we let people in.
Okay.
And many presidents have issued travel bans, and they're not something that's ever done lightly. It's not something that's done with a flick of the pen or a quick phone call. It's something that's done with a lot of deliberation. That's why the countries that Donald Trump chose to issue these temporary travel restrictions on were countries that had actually come from the Obama administration. This is research that they had done.
Okay.
And this is building off, a precedence of, presidents using travel restrictions to ensure the safety of Americans. So I think at the end of the day, this is something that's done for the benefit of the American people to ensure the safety of the American people.
Okay, thank you. And then before we go, I want to make sure that people know how they can find your club. So, Seppi, how could they find more information about joining your club?
Well, we have a lot of social media outlets. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. If you're well acquainted with the Fullerton.edu site, you can click on Titan Link and just search Democrats and we come up.
Chris, what if they want to find out more information about your club?
Yeah, absolutely. So we meet Tuesdays at 7 p.m. in either the Hedebrink or the Gilman Room. I signed us up for Hedebrink, but they keep bopping us back and forth for some reason. You can find us on social media at CSUF GOP, whichever one, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Our email is GOPCSUF. I don't know who the other CSUF GOP is, but yeah, no, that's the best way to find us right there.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'd like to thank both of you again for being here with us today. I hope that the people watching are able to find value in what you say, and hopefully you get a few more members out of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you again. I'd like to
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Of course. That's all the time we have for today. So until next time, I'm Cassidy Jo Fullerton. Thank you for watching In Focus.